Hello and welcome back to the Show Me Show podcast for episode 35. Very weird episode today. I'm joined by Mr. Jacob Baldwin, who's going to. We had some big news in the Cardinals world today, so we're going to break it down. No Cam on this episode. He's been busy lately and he couldn't make it. But me and him will be back tomorrow to recap Week 7 and do our picks for Week 8. So if you're listening to this, if you're like one of the early listeners and you listen immediately, we'll have Cam back on tomorrow. But for now, we're recording this Wednesday night, October 26th, me and Jake. And earlier today, John Mozeliak had a press conference with the media. And boy, oh boy, was it a big one. A lot of stuff was released. And we're just going to dive right into it here. I think we can start with probably the biggest thing, which is the coaching openings. There was some big coaching news that was released. So Jeff Albert, Mike Maddox, and Brian Eversgerd are all stepping down or stepping away from their current positions. Brian Eversgerd was the bullpen coach, Mike Maddox was the pitching coach, and Jeff Albert was, of course, the hitting coach. And with the departure of Skip Schumacher going to be the Marlins' new manager, which was released a few days ago, the Cardinals now have a shitload of coaching openings. So what do you think about it, Jake? It was pretty shocking news to hear that this morning. It was just right off the bat. That's pretty much what he started with in the press conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it's a lot to unpack. Especially, we knew the press conference, but it almost seems like, in an aspect, that it's coming at a weird time. But I guess not really. It just has that kind of feel to it. But this awesome for Skip. I want to say that. I feel like it was only a matter of time before Skip got a managerial position. I think the Marlins are definitely intriguing. Hard to pass up Florida, I think. Great vacation place. And spring being in Jupiter, so won't have to move too far for that. Great opportunity for him. Sandy Alcantara is hard to pass up, especially because they got him locked up. So he looks like he's going to be Skip's ace for years. Maddox, you can let the door hit you. He had a great career, I guess. He was a pitching coach for a long time. Maybe rode on the coattails of his brother being the greatest pitcher of all time. But he pitched in the MLB too. But I think the game had caught up to him a little bit. And Jeff Albert's the big one. Eversgerd, I don't even know, to be honest. But Albert's the big one, I think. A shock to me.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Fair warning just for all the listeners. Jake is going to sound like he's on a phone call just because he's at his house, so he didn't have a mic available. But, we'll still be able to hear him fine. It's just going to not sound as clear as me. But the Jeff Albert one was shocking. As Mo said in the press conference, he basically was like, I was ready to offer him a new contract. And I think this is what makes it so shocking is that Jeff Albert didn't want to come back. Like, Mike Maddox, I feel like it was just time for him to go. But Jeff Albert was going to get a new contract with the team, but he stepped away, and it was mostly due to what he stated as he was getting a lot of the blame for what the offense was doing, which, I mean, wasn't his fault. If you look at his stats, they've been a top 10 offense for the past few years, and what he's done to the minor leagues and their bats down there. I mean, he's really put together a nice system, and it's kind of shocking. I mean, it's not shocking because I've seen a ton of hate for Jeff Albert, and he has gotten a lot of blame. But it is kind of weird to think about, like, the fans, they got this to happen. The fans that wanted him gone, they got him gone. It was all they're doing. So you can't blame the front office for this, but it's going to be interesting to see who replaces him and how good they can lead this offense and developing the offense really in the minors, because that's a huge part of what Jeff Albert was doing.
Yeah, I'm going to wait just in case it's like has the lack. I would think the minor league part of it is almost – I would think the minor league part of it's almost just as important because, like, the new hitting coach is going to have Goldie and Arenado in the lineup, and, like, what's he going to do for Goldie and Arenado? So, I mean, I think the minor league guys are almost more important. And of all the moves the fans on Twitter got to make, I'm sad that the Jeff Albert one's the one we got. Well, not us. I mean, me and you have been big Jeff Albert guys for years. Maddox is the one that I think the fans should have. And I feel like it's definitely like you're either the analytical people love Jeff Albert and the old school people love Mike Maddox, and you're either one or the other. Like
one or the other, yep.
I feel like it's either one or the other. And too much of the old heads on Twitter got Jeff Albert out of here. And I'm very intrigued by all the openings. I feel like, sadly, I think they're all going to be in-house, just promotions. I would like to see maybe a couple of them. Jeff Albert, he came from the Astros, and I mean, so maybe they'll go outside. But I feel like pitching coach definitely has to come from outside almost, because I'm trying to think what we have.
Turner Ward, I feel like.
I don't know. I don't know if Ward's getting all the way up. I guess Dusty Blake maybe for pitching coach, but I don't know if either of them guys are like top dogs.
No, I mean, they're definitely not top dogs by any means, but the Dusty Blake one that's what intrigued. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw we had an opening there, because we hired him on this year, I do believe. He's only been with us for 1 year, and he was the pitching strategist. And so basically he got the depth charts for like all the other teams, and he basically like discovered a way of how to pitch hitters of opposing teams and like what is the best way to do that. And I think that's going to translate well to being a pitching coach. And I would not be surprised if that's who they choose at all. If they do go outside, that's going to be when it really is weird, because there's so many options outside the organization. I think maybe for hitting coach, we do that again, or, outside could mean like maybe bring in a former player. I know players are talking about Lance Berkman, Matt Holliday, even Carlos Beltran has had his name thrown out there a few times to be the hitting coach. So, but we could go in-house because we have a lot of those guys that come from the Jeff Albert system that maybe want to step up and just continue it. I don't know. But so the hitting coach one is kind of a mystery to me. The bullpen coach one, I really don't think is that big of an opening. I don't think the bullpen coach has a lot to do with anything. He picks up the phone and answers phone calls, like when Mike Maddox or Ollie Marmol call to the bullpen.
I feel like we kind of have opposite views on this. I feel like pitching coach is going to have to come from outside. And I think hitting coach, I think Jeff Albert, a lot of the minor league hitting coaches, I think, are Jeff Albert enthusiasts. And I think they really buy into what Albert thought. So I think we could just promote a minor league guy to the MLB. And I've heard a lot of not rumblings, but just a lot of people love the Dodgers assistant pitching coach. And I mean, obviously they have Kershaw, Buehler, Urias, Gosselin. So, I mean, what really has he had to do? But that intrigues me a little bit. And for the hitting coach, I like the idea of Holliday or Berkman. They're both college coaches, so it's not like I feel like a lot of people are just quick to throw out an old player that hit well. But,
yeah,
as we've seen in the past,
that's the same thing with
great players don't make great great coaches or GMs, like we saw with like Jeter and Magic Johnson. I mean, those are GMs, but I don't always think it's a guarantee.
Yeah. And I think we kind of saw that with a lot of fans pushing for Chris Carpenter to maybe be the pitching coach, which I thought was just weird because he was a dog on the mound, but I don't know if he'd really translate well to pitching coach, because you notice a lot of like pitchers don't actually become good pitching coaches, with the exception of like Mark Pryor over with the Dodgers. But, you see some of the top, like Brent Strom. He's just been a coach his whole life, and I would love to that's a wet dream for me to get Brent Strom as the pitching coach, but I think he's locked up with the Diamondbacks pretty good. And then, you see what are some other top pitching coaches that you see? Dave Duncan for a long time with the Cardinals. He didn't really play much in the big leagues. So you see some of these guys that kind of like Dusty Blake. They're just pitching strategists. They just know the way. And some people, they just have a baseball mind. Maybe they don't have the ability, but they have the mind. And and Turner Ward was the assistant hitting coach. I was thinking he was the assistant pitching coach, but I was wrong with that. So I guess maybe we could see that, Turner Ward get promoted, because I know he had a lot of the stuff with Jeff Albert. But it's going to be interesting, because those are some big positions, and even the bench coach, that's the right-hand man to Ollie Marmol. So I would assume that he has a huge part in hiring the bench coach, because, it's his right-hand man. And I don't know. We hired from outside the organization with Skip last year. I think that worked out really well, but it's going to be interesting to see if, we go for an in-house hire, or if we bring back somebody like Mike Schilt to be the bench coach again,
I don't think there's no chance Schilt comes back as the bench coach.
Yeah, I know.
Why would you go back
I was
to
just
where
joking.
you got fired? I feel like Stubby Clapp is the big one to get bench coach. I feel like that's
a good pick.
Maybe, yeah, because I feel like first base coach, you could fill that. Like, I'm sure there's more to it than we think, but I feel like Stubby being the AAA manager of the year, and I feel like that's just like kind of a lock. But I don't know. When I play the show all the time, the bench coach always intrigues me. So I think that's an intriguing position. And as Derek Gould pointed out today in the press conference, the last 4 Cardinals bench coaches have been managers. So that's exciting to see. Maybe 5 in a row, depending on who they pick. And Stubby Clapp, if it goes Stubby Clapp, I was thinking this today, interviewed with the Blue Jays and Pirates the last time they both had openings. So very well could be 5 in a row for the Cardinals if Stubby Clapp gets that job.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I'm trying to think of who it was. So it was obviously Skip Schumacher just got his. Ollie Marmol was the bench coach last year, so he was with the Cardinals. Mike Schilt was with the Cardinals, and then was it David Bell before that with the Reds?
Yep.
Okay. I know my ball. All right. So do you have anything else any other thoughts?
Not really. I'm sad to see. When I read that tweet, I was more focused on Mike Maddox, and I was like, so went from such a high to such a low, because it said Jeff Albert first, but I just skipped right over it and went straight to the Mike Maddox, because that was the one I wanted to read. And then I read the Jeff Albert, and I was like, oh my God. And then he was like, we tried to bring him back, and I was like, oh, that's an even bad look.
Yeah. But Mike Maddox, I have a feeling, might stay within the organization, because he just said he didn't want the high pressure role anymore, which I honestly think it might be, when he was with Matheny and when he was with Mike Schilt for a majority of the time, they're kind of like a little bit more old school, but then Ollie comes in and he's more new school with the analytics and stuff like that. And I feel like they differed heavily in opinions. And, he didn't want to say it publicly. He wanted to go about it nicely. But I really think that, it has to do with age. He kind of wants to take a step back and not have a high leverage role. But I think he really had a tough time adjusting to Ollie's system this year, which makes, Ollie, I thought, did a great job handling the bullpen and the starting and, just handling arms and injuries all year. And that's something I appreciated about him. And I don't think Maddox did that very well. So I'm excited to see him gone, because the new era of pitching, and I think the Cardinals need to adopt it.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter today about I just feel like pitchers for the Cardinals since Maddox got hired haven't really stepped up. Flaherty has kind of just been so, and he was the big one that was supposed to develop. I feel like everything besides that has been brought from the outside, and I just feel like Maddox hasn't really done much with pitchers that have had decent potential. And I think Hudson's probably the biggest failed experiment. Not saying he had untapped potential, but I definitely thought there was a lot more to Hudson after that first season, and that kind of just flew out the window.
Yeah, the development part was a huge thing. And, Flaherty, you mentioned, he's dealt with a lot of injuries. And Hicks, he's another one that maybe could have developed better. He's also dealt with a lot of injuries. But at the same time, you can kind of, if these guys like are consistently dealing with injuries, that's something you can almost blame on the pitching coach, because of like they set the workouts, they set the routines, they set the pitches and stuff like that they throw in the pitch counts. So you can almost blame stuff like that to a certain extent on the pitching coach. And I think he might have had something to do with it, because these guys, Hicks and Flaherty, two biggest examples of guys that maybe don't fit like the Mike Maddox build. Like Hudson, he fits the Mike Maddox build, pitch to contact. But those two guys are like strikeouts, innings, high leverage pitches. I don't think they really fit Mike Maddox well. And just to see them maybe develop a little bit better under a new pitching coach. So I'm interested to see what happens with that. And what also I'm interested to see is some other things that Mr. John Mozeliak mentioned in this press conference, and potentially one of the biggest ones is he basically came out and said it, and he said, we need a catcher. Like when they asked him what's going to be the big plans for the offseason, and he said, well, we need a catcher. And he did make sure to go to the lengths to compliment Andrew Kisner on his season. He said he thought he had a good season. And for a backup in his first year really in full season in the big leagues, I thought he did fine. But I would not be confident with him as our starter going forward by any means, by any stretch of imagination. His framing on pitches is god awful. His hitting is all right. But as a backup, I feel confident in him as a backup catcher. He's not going to be a star, but he's a really good backup, I feel like. But with this news, it's so obvious that it's Wilson Contreras. Like, it couldn't be any more obvious. Wilson Contreras is going on social media basically saying, yeah, I'd love to play in St. Louis. This seems like a great place for me. He's liking the videos of people saying he's coming to St. Louis. John Mozeliak saying we need a catcher. And how many catchers are available on the open market? I mean, really, Sean Murphy's been talked about. But when you have a guy at the Wilson Contreras level that has showed interest in coming to St. Louis and has played at an elite level, there's no reason to go out and trade for a guy who hasn't proven to be as good. You're giving up assets for somebody that might not be as good. So why not just go out and sign this guy? He's going to be, he's going to cost some money, probably $15 million a year if I had to guess. But I think it's definitely worth it. He's right in the prime of his career.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. Maybe besides Sean Murphy being worse than Wilson Contreras, I feel like you could make an argument that they're both one and the same. I think Murphy plays a lot better defense, and his bat is probably a little worse, so I think it balances out. But, Mozeliak, another big aspect of all this is Mozeliak saying he did think payroll would go up, and I look at that as that's even more in the catcher, because you got to look at it as Yachty and Pujols, that's a combined $12 million, that's off the books, and Wainwright last year was making $17. I think Wainwright maybe gets half of that, if we're being honest. So, I mean, you're looking at close to $20 million off the books just from three guys, plus him saying payroll's going up. So I think you could easily afford Wilson Contreras and some. So I think that you maybe even – I'm even fine if they pad Contreras' contract just a little bit to get him to be in St. Louis. If they got to push $20 million, you got to push $20 million. I think it's worth it.
I would agree with that, and I certainly agree with like the thing with Sean Murphy being better defender, and I think he'd replace Yachty very well. But I don't know. Wilson Contreras over years has said stuff about like I want to be as good as Yachty, like almost like looking up to Yachty as being that guy at the catching position, and I think he wants to follow him, like to be the guy to replace him. I think that would mean a lot to him. And it just makes so much sense, to get the Cubs back almost for the Jason Hayward thing, which now it looks like they did us a favor by signing him to that long deal. But, it'd still be nice to get them back for that. And this is a player that it would be worse than the Jason Hayward situation, because Jason Hayward played one season with us. This is a guy that's been raised in the Cubs organization, has been an all-star for them, huge part of the World Series team. And to see him come to the Cardinals would just be devastating to them, and I love it. in all parts, and it would just be a perfect move. And yeah, that's a position that we need for sure, and I'm glad to see that the front office is addressing that. And, we do have the Kisner, like we said, and Ivan Herrera in the minor leagues who could develop and be something, but I don't want to take a chance on that when you have a guy like, Contreras that wants to come here and you have the money to do it. So is there anyone else coming off the books either? Because
Dickerson, he made what, 3 or 5 million?
5, yeah.
Yeah. I if the Cardinals sign Contreras, I'm all for putting Herrera on the trade block. Because, I would imagine you would have to get Contreras is anywhere from the 4 to 6 year mark, probably. 6 is maybe pushing it for a catcher, but I feel like 4, 5, or 6 will probably get the deal done. 3 is a little too short. I think Contreras doesn't want 3. So, if you lock Contreras up for 6 years, there's no point in keeping Herrera, I think, because you can just find a serviceable backup on the market, and you could maybe move Herrera for maybe an ace, which would finally be nice.
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect. And what I've noticed about the young prospect catching market over the last few years is that it is hot. Like, teams will just gloat over a young catcher that they can bring in, and a lot of times it backfires. Like, you see some of the top catching prospects, a few that come to mind is Francisco Pena. What was that his name? Francisco, the guy that was with the Indians, and then he was with the Padres. Francisco Mejia, that's what I'm thinking of, not Pena. Francisco Mejia. Francisco Pena was a backup catcher for the Cardinals, and he was
He's in the Rays now, actually, I think.
Oh, really? And
maybe he went Rays
Francisco
Padres, or Padres Rays. I'm gonna look it up.
Okay. All right. But Francisco Mejia is who I'm thinking of, and I'm kind of starting to see it with the Mets prospect Francisco Alvarez. He doesn't look as good as what he was going to be. I'm sorry,
I'm
seeing it, but
he played 2 weeks in the MLB.
Yeah, he was terrible. I know. I just didn't get the vibe from him. He could still be great. I could be wrong.
Number 1 prospect, he plays 2 weeks. Are you going to give up on Jordan Walker if he's bad 2 weeks in his MLB debut?
Well, it depends. I'm basing this off my feel. I'm not basing it off how he did. I'm basing it off my feeling. And I just have a feeling he's, the Mets. It's the Mets curse, as Frank the Tank says.
Well, you can't get any worse than the catcher.
So that's
you can't get any worse than the catcher the Mets are going to have, according to Frank.
I don't know. Thomas Nito's up for a Gold Glove.
Yeah, but McCann is eating away at their payroll for it. That's basically free money for James McCann.
True. And then one more thing so that was the catching talk. Ivan Herrera flipping would be great. I agree with that if we sign Contreras. Another thing that Mozeliak addressed is a reporter asked, he says, you kind of have 5 guys right now in the rotation going into next year. He's like, how does that make you feel? How do you take pride in that? And Mozeliak didn't sound excited at all. He's like, yeah, we have 5 guys, and it's nice to know that, if the season were to start today, that we would have 5 guys that we're confident in to go out there and pitch in a full rotation. But it sounded heavily. He's like, yeah, we're going to be looking hard in this market, and we want to improve this rotation. He's like, yeah, we have 5 guys, but we want to improve it. And that to me was shocking, because I thought with the news that Wainwright's coming back, that was some other big news that came out this morning before the press conference, is that Adam Wainwright's coming back for one final season. He did announce this will be his final season, so I guess he's kind of doing like the retirement tour like Yadi and Albert did last year, so that's kind of cool. After that, I was like, oh, no way we go out and get a starter, because we have Flaherty and Montgomery, 2 top of the rotation guys. We got Michaelis and Wainwright, 2 good middle of the rotation guys. And then we got Steven Matz, who showed a lot of upside this year. He dealt with a lot of injuries, but when he was pitching, he was very average, if not above average at times. So to have him in there as the 5th starter is very good. But to see Mo not content with the rotation, we want to go out and we want to get a dog on the pitching mound. We want the guy that's going to go out there and give us 7-8 shutty in the postseason. That to me re-energized me. Like this, I was going into this offseason like very dull. Like,
I don't know if I listened and I did not get the impression that we were getting a 7 or 8 shutout in the postseason guy.
Oh, well,
I don't think
that
any chance we're getting an ace. I took it as a complete different way. The part that stood out to me is he said a couple years ago he felt like he had 11 guys that could have broke spring, and he felt like he had 11 guys to choose from instead of 5, and it made it hard, and it still backfired. And I think that was the year that we had to trade for Lester and Happ. That at the beginning of the season, it felt like they had 11 guys, and they still had to go get more pitching. So I think he just means like more depth. I don't know. That's how I took it. But then again, if it's just going to be depth, then I feel like he wouldn't have mentioned it. Like, I don't know. Because he said you could never have too much pitching, which is true. But, like, if you just add depth, then I just feel like, what's the point of that? If you need depth,
there's no need to mention it.
And what's the point in getting depth, spending money on depth if you have, I guess I got the impression Hudson's out.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I guess you have
huge
Liberatore. And then that was the intent of our guys, that it was more guys that would, I guess Palante, I forgot about him. You have Liberatore and Palante, so I just took it as they wanted someone who could fill in as starters, not someone that was getting added to the rotation. Because I feel like it's either like the top dogs in this class are DeGrom, Rodon, and Kershaw, and I don't see any of those happening. So then I just feel like if you're going to spend on the next level of guys, which I guess would be like Jameson Taillon, Sonny Gray, Quintana. I feel like Quintana, I'd be fine if they added him back. But I don't know. I see it as a move like that more than a 7 or 8 shutty. But I guess theoretically Quintana could have gave you 7 or 8 if Marmol didn't click hook.
Yeah, that's true. But how I took it is, like, because he used the word improve. He said like that. He said improve the rotation. And so to me, that doesn't seem like adding depth. That seems like getting more talent out there on that rotation. And you have to keep in mind, this is Flaherty's last year before free agency. This is Montgomery's last year before free agency. Wainwright is going to retire after the year. Michaelis only has, after this year, he's got 1 more year left. So the rotation is going to be in shambles next year. So to me, I'm thinking maybe this is more of a long-term move as well. Like maybe go out and get a guy that still has 3-4 years left on his contract, that you can rely on for years to come. And maybe that's through a trade, because we have a lot of outfield depth. And Mo even mentioned it with Gorman and O'Neill. He made it hard. He made it seem like they didn't really have a place on the team next year. And so maybe that's what they use. Maybe they use them for trade bait to get that starter, because they addressed the shortstop position, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to see what our options are. But we do have Tommy there that can play that." And then he said, "At second base, we got Donovan." So it sounds like Gorman might be an odd man out right now, which sucks because I'm a big Gorman guy. But if we can trade him for a high quality starter, I'd be perfectly fine with it. But that, to me, that's how I took it. As we're going to try and improve this rotation. And back what you said about Hudson being the odd man out, very true, because somebody asked him about Hudson. I don't remember what the question was exactly, but he was like, yeah, I still think Dakota has that in him, but it was a very unconfident, yeah, I still think he has it in him. Like,
yeah,
he basically, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he came out and, he was a dog next year and a 3.5 ERA guy, like he still has that in him. But I think the star power that they once saw in Dakota Hudson, I think that is all diminished. We in the fans this year, they did not like how he pitched this year, and he's already 28 years old. Like that's something we think about, where we forget about, because he just came up a few years ago, but he's literally 28 years old. that's in the prime. He should be dominating at this point if he is going to be good at all in his career, and he really didn't show that at all last year. And so I think the Dakota Hudson experience may be done, and so maybe you flip him and O'Neill or Gorman in a package, and you could get yourself a dog on the mound. At the same time, without, it's not getting any depth, but it is getting more talent at the position. So that's something that's kind of cool too. And then you do have Liberatore as well, like you mentioned, which for me, it was really tough to see him pitch this year. His fastball got ate up. That's one. He doesn't have an elite fastball at all, and he really struggled. Really struggled with the fastball this year, and that's kind of an important pitch. So I guess we'll have to see what kind of year he has. But yeah, that was one thing that I took out of this press conference that really re-energized me.
Yeah, I will add, I did look it up. Michaelis' contract is done next year too. 2023 is the last year of that deal.
Oh.
So
okay.
I guess then, yeah, that's 4 starters that you lose next year. So I think you would have, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Then you almost have to get someone that has more than 1 year controllability, because you sure as shit can't go into next offseason with 4 gaps in your rotation. Even in an offseason, you can't do that, let alone a Cardinals offseason. I don't know when the last time they signed 4 free agents was. So, but I would agree with, I would agree with what you say about Liberatore. He's the prospect that has worried me the most the last couple of years, and hopefully the new pitching coach can do something about it. But yeah, I just felt like at the time it was, especially because Randy A had that postseason to remember. But at the time, it was like, well, we're getting a top prospect from the Rays. But we should have known if the Rays, they have some kind of satanic devil magic. If the Rays were giving up a top prospect, we should have known that it was not going to work out, because I always feel like the Rays are always right in every trade that they make. So we should have known that kind of. But
True.
Yeah. Liberatore is the one for me that he's really got to show us something next year.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what. Go ahead.
I was just going to add on that. I guess, yeah, now that I think about that. Oh, Matz. I guess they'd have Matz. No, he's the only one you would have, wouldn't it, next year? He'd be the only one you have? Okay. Yep. So, yeah, they're going to
him and Hudson maybe, but.
No way Hudson makes it another full season. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even offer salary arbitration. They just non-tender him. Yeah. Another aspect of the non-tendering is and someone asked about him today, Alex Reyes. I feel like this offseason could make or break him. The Cardinals have, I feel like you almost want to hope that he can get back to where he was, and he hasn't, which sucks, because now the last 2 top prospects the Cardinals really ever had in the farm system, Oscar Taveras 8 years ago today, and Reyes, who has just been so injury prone. So hopefully Walker could switch that up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another topic for next year, the Jordan Walker discussion. The Jesus discussion, basically, the Jesus of Cardinals baseball. Biggest prospect since Albert. And I guess that's one final note we can end on here with the press conference, because those were some of the big things that I took out of it. Anyway, I mean, the coaching stuff is obviously huge, but there was another mention about somebody asking him, like, well, are you confident in Edman playing shortstop, or are you going to go out and look? And John Mozeliak was basically like, are you asking us if we're in the shortstop market?
If we're in the shortstop market,
so,
yep.
And he said, he's like, well, we're going to weigh our options. We're going to see what's out there. We're going to see if we can add some value at that position. But he basically said, yeah, we're confident in Tommy to be able to play the position. And he also mentioned how Mason Wynn is on his way up. And so he said, while we do want to improve the team as much as possible and spend money, he says, Exactly. He's like, but we do want to leave the openings and the opportunities for guys like Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn were the two specific ones he mentioned. For those two, we want to leave the openings for them to come up and shine. And so that to me really is like, yeah, we're really not going to be involved in the shortstop market, at least not at like the elite, like Bogarts, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa level. If we do, it'll be like a 1 or 2 year deal because we want to make room for Mason Wynn.
Yeah, I would agree.
It makes sense.
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking that today too when that guy asked that same question because you have Wynn coming up. So if you're not going to get Turner, Bogarts, or Correa, then you might as well not add a shortstop, in my opinion. Just let Edman have it if you're not adding one of those three. And then when Wynn's ready, just move Edman back over to second, or just figure that out when it happens. But if you're not signing one of those three, you might as well not sign a shortstop and let that money go to either a pitcher or, I don't even know, Contreras maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm a big Trey Turner guy, and I would salivate. I'd be licking my chops at the thought of Trey Turner in a Cardinals uniform playing Cardinals in that leadoff spot for us, just hitting dongs, stealing bases, making plays at the shortstop position. It would just be amazing to watch, but he's going to be a bunch. He's going to cost money. Like he's going to get $35 million a year, probably like an 8 or 9 year deal. That's just how good of a player he is. And whoever gets him will probably get a steal. It's going to be like a Bryce Harper type deal. Like you're going to get your bang for your buck with him. But as far as, that's what happened in the Cardinals press conference today. And we've been here talking about it for 35 minutes already. That's how big of a press conference it was. All this stuff came from one 30, 40-minute press conference. And it was big, and Mo released a lot, and it really sounded like, to me anyway, the Cardinals fans have been complaining for the last few years about how it's the same thing every year. We're good. We're never like bad like the Pirates are, but we never do anything in the playoffs. We haven't since 2013 when we went to the World Series. That was the last time we did anything in the playoffs. And I really think that Mo and the front office really saw that this year. I think it was disappointing to see Yachty and Albert go out like that. For them, especially because how much they meant to this organization and to the city. And I think it really hurt them. And, with Wainwright coming back one more year, they're like, we can't send Wainwright out the same way. And so I think they're really trying to become like a top dog in the NL this year. Even though that doesn't mean anything because the Dodgers, Braves, and Mets all got knocked off in their first playoff series this year. But, you got to be able to win in the playoffs. And Arenado opting in, I tweeted this out earlier, is that everyone's saying that Yachty was the heartbeat of the team. Yachty was the soul. Yachty was like the captain of the team, which is true. He has been for a long time. This is Arenado's team now. Like Goldschmidt is really good. He's a good player, but he's just not – he's not a captain material. He just kind of goes about his business, does his thing. Really nice guy, but this is an Arenado-led team now. This is his team. Wainwright's obviously going to lead the rotation again like he has for years and years now. Arenado's the captain of this team, and he's going to opt into his contract. Mozeliak still said they're working it out, which scares me a little bit but we still have like 2 weeks before we got to worry about that at all. And I think Arenado is going to be involved in at least to an extent, some of the decision-making that goes into acquisitions and stuff this offseason. And I like that because Arenado is a competitor, and he's got a great winning personality. Like when I see him, I'm like, this guy's a winner. He cares a lot. And, he didn't get the results he wanted in the postseason this year, but really he was hitting the ball hard. He had a lot of bad luck. He had 2 big strikeouts in the end of the game, but you can't be perfect. And I don't blame him for that loss at all. A little bit, but not really. And I'm really excited to see him back because he's like a perfect Cardinal, and this is his team now. And I think they're going to let Mo cook, and I'm just excited. I've been re-energized after that press conference, so thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Mozeliak. We appreciate it.
So I think Mo kind of said today, he was like, he said he met with Arenado in person in California, and he said, we didn't really talk money. He said, Arenado wanted to know what the future of the ball club looked like, and I think that they both sides of that really take that to heart, because I remember at the deadline, Arenado saying, "Hey, we think we got to add," and they did. And I think it says a lot when your star says, "Hey, we need a little bit more." Uh, I think in the past, Cardinals haven't really had that the past 10 years. No one's saying, "Hey, I need a little bit more." Maybe a little reductant to say that. But yeah, I like that Mozeliak said he doesn't think there's any reconstructing of the contract. He thinks that Arenado is either opting in or opting out. And I think with him saying the payroll is increasing and they have a lot of decisions to make, I think that he's opting back in, and I think they're going to add. Those are my closing remarks about the press conference.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. The words, "we're adding payroll," that was uttered. And so expect some noise for the Cardinals this offseason. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be stuff. Just to keep in mind as fans, it's not going to be a perfect offseason. There's going to be people out there that you want that we don't get. But just know that ultimately John Mozeliak has been in this business a long time. He has never had a losing season, except in 2007, I think. But I'm not sure if he was there yet. That might have still been Walt Jocketty.
No, I think Jocketty got fired. No,
you sure?
Jocketty got fired after 2007. Jocketty got fired after 2007.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. And so he's never had a losing season. He knows what he's doing. He knows ball. And people want to say fire Mo, but I really think he's going to go out and he's going to go ham this year. We look 2 years ago, we got Arenado. 4 years ago, we got Goldschmidt. So we're due for something this year. And I guess that's 40 minutes of Cardinals talk there. So that's more than you've gotten on any podcast this year so far. But this is an emergency one, obviously. Huge news coming out today. Had to be talked about. And the World Series starts tomorrow. By the time this comes out, it'll be tomorrow. So I guess we can just give our predictions real quick, not like in depth or anything, but me and you have a little bit of a bet going. You think it's going to be an easy Houston sweep. Let me throw this stat out for you. It's either going to be the Astros in 4 or 5 games or the Phillies in 6 or 7. That's it. There's no in between.
That's the bet.
And I'll tell you why. Because the last team.
Isn't that our bet?
No, the bet was 6 or 7 games.
The bet is you have the Astros in 6 or 7, and I have the bet was you have Phillies in 6 or 7, and I have Astros in 4 or 5.
Yeah. And that's what it was. But here's the stat that makes me think that one of those two is going to happen. No team has clinched the World Series at home since the 2013 Red Sox. Every single team since then has clinched on the road. I mean, obviously in 2020 there was no home team, but even still then, the team that played the road, they were the road team kind of, I guess, and that, they still won. So if you really think about it, every single team has celebrated on an opposing team's field in the gray uniforms since 2013. And guess who's playing on the road in games 4 or 5? Houston Astros. And in game 6 or 7, the road team is the Phillies. And I got the Phillies in, I'll say 6, because I think if it goes 7, it does actually go to Houston. Because I think the pitching matchup would favor them. But the Phillies, I think they go 6. They got Wheeler and Nola going in games 1 and 2, and they'll have them going in 5 and 6, I'm sure. And so they'll have them going four games, and then something about them. The Astros are obviously a better team. They're a way better team than what the Phillies are. They're an elite team. They're put together. There's not a down spot in the lineup at all. Their pitching rotation is immaculate. Their bullpen might be the best in baseball. But who else did we say that about? There's not a down spot in the lineup. Their rotation is really good. Their bullpen is really good in the playoffs. Who else did we say that about? The Atlanta Braves. And guess who beat them in 4 games? The Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies are just on a magical run right now, and I don't want to jinx it by picking them, but history shows that you can't stop the magic. So,
yeah, I mean, I totally get the comparison of the Braves being the top dog, but if we look at the past maybe 8 or so years, do the Braves even come close to matching up against the Astros in postseason success? No, they don't. I mean, when was the last time the Astros weren't in the ALCS? I mean,
2016.
Yeah. So, I mean, even in 2020, they finished below 500 in the regular season, which gets a whole nother topic, but they still make the ALCS somehow. And I just think that the Astros have too much good. I don't even know if that's possible, but you could almost make the argument that they lost their best player last year in Correa, and somehow they're still going. But I would say that
Jeremy Pena.
I don't think it's going to be easy. No way for Houston, because I think Houston has a lot more to lose than Philly has a lot more to lose. I mean, they got, which is going to be tough, but Houston has dogs, and Houston wants this title, their first one since the whole scandal, even though they've had two shots now since, or I guess one. 2019, the scandal hadn't come out yet, even though they won the American League in that year. So I think Houston wants to put a lot of that to shame, and I think they do it in 5.
All right. See, I wouldn't be shocked if that happened if Houston just came out and run the table just because of how much more dominant they are. And, they haven't lost a postseason game yet either. So the last team – here's a fun stat that was tweeted out by MLB Random Stats today, Jeremy Frank. The last team to beat the Houston Astros this year was the Philadelphia Phillies, and the last team to beat the Philadelphia Phillies in a series was the Houston Astros. I mean, we forget they played the last 3 games of the year of the regular season. The Astros and Phillies played each other, so that's kind of a cool stat that that I don't know if that's ever happened before, where the 2 World Series teams ended the World Series or ended the regular season playing each other.
Yeah, definitely going to be. I'm so excited. I just looked today to see what the time was for Friday's games. I'm excited to watch. It's gonna be good baseball, I think. It always is. I feel like the World Series is always so much fun to watch. It doesn't get the love that it really deserves because people, how people are with baseball being boring. But for us baseball enthusiasts, it is so much fun to watch. It's really, I don't know. There's still something like so good about watching it, even when your team's not in it. Because when your team's in it, you almost can't just chill and watch the game because you're so tight and anxious and stuff. So it's watching it when your team's not playing still has a good feel, even though your team's not in it. And it just feels like the further you get in the playoffs, every inning and pitch and all that stuff matters so much more. And that's when baseball's at its best.
Oh yeah. That's for sure, and especially, baseball at its highest stakes. One note about the World Series this year is Joe Buck, for the first time since I can remember, he's not going to be calling the World Series on Fox. It's going to be Joe Davis, who, if you watched any of the postseason games between if you watched the NLCS, he called that, and if you watched the Phillies and Braves in the NLDS, he called that series as well. So he's a very good voice. I've watched him, or I've listened to him call games many times, and he compliments whoever well. I think John Smoltz is still going to be announcing. He's going to be the color guy. But that's a big change, is that we're used to Joe Buck calling the big World Series moments, and he's a great announcer, but I don't know. I have a sneaky feeling that Joe Davis might have some really, really good calls this year. Just some really electric calls.
I think Joe Davis already has. He called Harper's home run to perfection, I think.
Yep.
And he's young. I mean, I think he's going to be one of those guys. And I loved Buck. I didn't think Buck got the hate I don't think was deserved at all. But I think Joe Davis has gotten himself in a great opportunity, and I think he just has a chance to run away with being the voice of I almost said the Super Bowl, the voice of the World Series for years. I feel like he's going to be like our I don't want to compare him to any of the greats really quite yet, but I feel like when we're old and Joe Davis is old, it's going to be kind of cool watching him still call the World Series. He's done a great job. I'm not a big John Smoltz fan, I'll be honest about that. I think he's kind of like a Jim Edmonds. just points out like very obvious and kind of almost boring stuff. But he has some good insight. Sometimes his stories are great because he was just on those great teams. But I think he's can get a little annoying. But I think Joe Davis is going to hit it out of the park.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big Joe Davis guy. I'm excited to see what the World Series has for us, and excited to see what the 2023 Cardinals have in store. So that's going to wrap up this episode. Thank you, Jake, for joining us in place of Cam, who is not available once again, though. Yeah, of course. And once again, me and Cam will be back for tomorrow's show to preview the Week 8 and all that, and in the World Series. So, Cam's team finally got eliminated, the Yankees that he picked. So I'm interested to see what he has as well. But hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you're not a baseball fan, then I'm sorry. You probably didn't enjoy this, but I don't care. But that's going to wrap it up, and we'll see you guys soon.